Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Café Muse. And thank you, Michael Davis, for the lovely music. I'm Ellen Cole, and I'm hosting the reading tonight, along with Catherine Young, the editor of tonight's featured poetry anthology, Written in Arlington. Our technical wizard, Henry Crawford, is behind the scenes working his magic. Tonight, we're presenting poets featured in Written in Arlington, an anthology edited by Catherine and published by Paycock Press, containing the work of 87 poets and translators, all of whom have some strong connection to Arlington, Virginia. The readers of this event will be Francisco Aragon, Sandra Beasley, Andy Fogel, Corey Johnson, Jose Padua, Richard Peabody, and Amy Young. I encourage you to support the poets by buying a copy of Written in Arlington tonight, and if you are able, donating to Café Muse to support our literary programs. The links for buying books and for making a donation are in the chat. Audience members will be muted throughout the program. You can use the chat to comment if you like. Our program will be 1 hour long. The next Café Music program will be on Monday, August 2nd. It will be our annual Poetry in Translation program presented by DC Alt. Before the reading begins, I want to tell you a little bit about Catherine Young. She's the author of 2 full-length poetry collections, Women Drinking Absinthe, just published by Allen Squire Press, and Day of the Border Guards, plus 2 chapbooks. She's been published in many distinguished journals, including Prairie Schooner and the Iowa Review. Her translation of Russian language prose and poetry have won numerous international awards. She also was the inaugural Poet Laureate of Arlington, Virginia, serving in that role from 2016 to 2018. And I might add, she's a rock star of the Washington area poetry community, serving in many different roles. So I'm delighted to present to you the very accomplished and all-around fabulous Catherine Young.
Tonight, we are here, and I am delighted to be here. All of us are delighted to be here with you because all of the readers have work Written in Arlington, which, as Ellen said, is a collection of poems and poets connected to Arlington, Virginia. The project, it actually was something I started thinking about when I was Poet Laureate. We didn't have the funding or the resources to do it, but after I stepped down from that role, I got an individual artist grant from Arlington County. Thank you, Arlington County. And the result was a 2-pronged project, the first of which is the Written Anthology, Written in Arlington. I hope you can see this, and I know some of our other readers are going to hold it up during the program tonight. So this is the Written Anthology, but there is also a digital component to the project that I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. The written work includes 150 poems, originally written in 4 different languages by 87 poets. And Arlington's poets come from all walks of life. We have people born in Arlington, immigrants, tourists, teachers, social workers, therapists, librarians, high school students, and so many others in this anthology. And the poets themselves currently live all over the world, from Washington State to Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., Washington State, Wisconsin, to Australia. And we have one poet who is currently living in Siberia. But they've all got some connection to Arlington. And it's not just the poets. The art on the book's cover is by Arlington artist Anya Getter. The cover design is by Sushmita Mazumdar, who is also a poet with work in the book. And the publisher, Paycock Press, is also local to Arlington. I've put ordering information in the chat, and I will put more. And of course, Written in Arlington is available from Paycock Press, Arlington's own, which is run by poet Richard Peabody, who is reading with us tonight. Also, as I said before, in addition to the printed book, there's a digital component. It's a living digital archive of the poetry of Arlington, and it's on a YouTube channel that includes videos of some of the poems in the books, but it's also got other work about Arlington that's not in the book. And you can check that out on YouTube at the channel Spoken in Arlington. And again, I'll put that link in the chat again. I loved every minute of collecting and editing these poems, and I hope you will enjoy them. I want to say also a special hello to all the poets and everyone else connected with the anthology, including a number of people at Café Muse, Karen Alanier, Henry Crawford, Michael Davis. They have poems in the anthology, and also to all the anthology contributors who I see in the audience tonight. So everyone connected to the anthology who's here, who's watching, not in the reading tonight, but joining us anyway, thank you for coming and thank you for being part of our anthology. Our first reader tonight is Amy Young, and I've put all the bios in the chat and I will put them in again. I will just say about Amy that she is the former poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia, and I believe she has driven through Arlington on her way to work, back and forth for quite a number of years, and she may tell you about that. So please welcome Amy Young.
Thank you so much. It's really obviously a pleasure to be part of this project, and the book is absolutely beautiful. When I received it, just as an object, it's beautiful to hold, and the cover art is fantastic, and the poems are so beautifully selected and arrayed. So I'm so pleased to be part of this. Yes, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and never thought that I would have a poem in an anthology of Arlington poetry. But the first poem I will read you is was born of a commute that I take pretty much every day during the school year when I'm coming home from work. The title is "Smile, This Could Be You." It's written in italics, and they're the words on a sign that will be explained in the poem. Just past the Kiss and Ride at Wilson Boulevard and Fort Myer Drive, a woman sits. This is her job. She shows up every day. The walk signal ticks. She sits, hopeful with a cup, a can. Below ground, the metro rumbles. This woman sits. This is her job. Every day she shows up. She is dependable. A mom. Her flap of cardboard tells me so. She sits. Some days the words change. The words change. She shifts her hips. This woman is so reliable. Even in the rain, she shows up. People know her. They stop and chat. A large American flag flails against concrete and glass. She is a fortress. She shows up every day. Every day she sits. This job requires fortitude. It is a full-time job. Sometimes the words change. The second poem I'm going to read to you is simply called Glebe. And for anybody living in this area, I'm sure that word rings a bell. Having grown up again in DC, when you cross over into Northern Virginia and you have to navigate all the various glebe roads, it can be quite intimidating. Lived in Northern Virginia for over 20 years now. I feel like I'm a master of this. But it begs the question of what a glebe is. And so there's an epigraph to this poem, a definition for the word: land belonging to or yielding revenue to the parish church. This poem is written in the form of a pantoon, which, if you're not familiar with that form, it's rather complicated, but basically the four lines in each verse shift positions throughout the poem, moving up with each consecutive verse. Glebe. Intractable traffic, slow flowing, over nothing like pastures. The hard black macadam is no wild river, offering holy fish. Over nothing like pastures, soar bright eagles back from the brink of no more. No offerings of silver fish in the flash of SUVs oblivious. Back from the brink of no more, eagles soar, not bound by boundaries. Silver SUVs flash by, wholly oblivious. This was once a lane of dirt, bound by boundaries. The traffic, intractable, is slow flowing. Once a lane of dirt, the hard black macadam is no wild river. And this last poem is probably the oldest of the three. I wrote it many years ago. Again, on my commute, and this is probably from passing by Arlington Cemetery on a winter morning. Arlington National Cemetery, winter. And it's somewhat in the form of an abecedary. Blank slate, blank canvas, blanket donned silently without request. Blanket a casket can rest on. Blanket that cannot be folded into a triangle. Carpet of snow, carpet of prayers. Casket resting beneath a canopy. Dear God, dear daughter, dear son. Dove motionless on a bare branch. Each stone a monument, a moment of silence multiplied. A hawk shifts its weight. Headstones sift. Light and lilac shadows whisper. Palette of white, palette of earth. Rest now, soldiers. White stones rising. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amy. So right there in those three poems, you get a sense of how what a wide range of subject matter we have. I mean, a lot of people who don't know Arlington think of only the cemetery, but so much more going on here. So that's why we did the anthology. Our next reader grew up in Arlington, and she has a new collection. Sandra Beasley's Made to Explode just came out, and she's going to read for us now.
Hi, everyone. I am delighted to be included in this. And I will just mention that, yeah, I grew up on 10th Road. My family later moved to Vienna. And the first poem, I'm going to read two poems. The first kind of draws on being based out of Tyson's. And then subsequently, for the last 20 years, I've lived in Washington, D.C. But even in the years after moving out of Arlington proper, it still always represented for me a really important nexus between my DC life and my Virginia life, thinking of places of commonality that I know people in this audience will recognize, like Iota, the Birchmere, the Arlington Arts Center. And in fact, Richard Peabody, who's on this event with us tonight, he has the 2005 photo that I think is it's the record of my very first adult public reading for Gargoyle at 4 Mile Run. And what I'll always remember is I got hopelessly lost because I did not yet understand that there are two Arlingtons. So I will jump without further ado into a poem called Elephant, which in many ways draws on my memory of specifically growing up in this area because of my father's connections with the military. He served in the Army for many, many years, and you'll hear that reflected here. Elephant. On the Route 7 strip, next to the office supply store, next to the pool supply store, next to the Tower Records, next to the TJ Maxx, the Ranger surplus lurked, where I shopped only at the edges. Iron-on patches, all-weather lighters, vintage plate pinups, never venturing into the groin of camouflage and camping gear until I began buying weapons, including a mace, a chained flail, several throwing stars, and the book Contemporary Surveillance Techniques, with its cover art showing a man crouched in a stereo speaker. All gifts from my father, because what do you get the man who has everything? And by everything, I mean a large caliber shell casing, upright and decorative in the living room, where you might expect a potted ficus to be. And these two were the years he gave me t-shirt after t-shirt, souvenirs of every posting and deployment, including the one that said Hard Rock Cafe, Baghdad, closed, Kuwait, now reopening. T-shirts that fit poorly over my new breasts, boxy, unflattering, and so I shut them away in drawers again and again, each of us trying to say to the other, I see you. The way a man with closed eyes takes the tail into his hands to see the elephant. And then I'll read one other, which is a prose poem. It's actually really marked by the last 5 years. I live in Southwest DC. There's a pedestrian walkway by which one can cross straight over onto Haynes Point. That became a huge and important refuge, certainly this past year when our travels were so circumscribed, but also just largely as I tried to live in both what I think of as my city, but also the nation's capital in a time when our nation has really struggled with itself. Haynes Point. The old men chide each other to tee up quick before the rain comes. I want to buy a fountain soda, sit on the porch, and eavesdrop. I want to buy a pitcher of beer. I walk the mini green, swoops of turf and brick that have been there since 1931. The city assembled this spit over a dozen years from 19th century dredgings. My dad detoured our Cadillac along the channel so we'd see the awakening. 5 pieces that hinted at a giant body breaking ground to breathe. The Peace Gardens funding never came through. The Navy enclosed 4 acres to build a steel shed, contents unknown, and the awakening moved to Maryland. The sidewalk is swept with mucky silt, and I'm getting mosquito bit, watching ducks toddle and peck on the far bank. National glimmers. One plane after another insists on liftoff as the storm eases across the river. Those old men chide each other. Go on now. They give each other answers no man gives when a woman does the asking. Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled and honored to be part of this collection. And thanks so much to Kate for her tireless efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's so happy to, I mean, it's amazing how many people come through Arlington, come from Arlington, and take it with them. You know, we tend to, a lot of people who live here tend to think of it as just, you know, this bedroom community that people pass through. But as you point out, there's so much here that we all share in common. So our next reader lives in DC, but she takes part in Arlington's creative community at Arlington's Studio Pause. Please welcome Corey Johnson.
Thanks, Catherine. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So as Catherine mentioned, I live in DC, was born in Columbia, Maryland, and now I'm a member of Studio Pause, which is in Boston. And so the 3 poems I'm going to read tonight are from a show that we had at the studio maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I guess. So I had drawn 3 portraits of 3 girls, and to accompany each portrait, I wrote a poem. And a lot of my art and poetry and writing is inspired by Black girls and women. I really just, you know, write for fun. So these were 3 fun poems that I wrote to go with these art pieces, and that's what I'll be sharing today. So my first poem is called Space Girl. You are here, button-lipped, shut-eyed, star-crowned space girl. Silver rings cloak your midnight spots, roll your storm clouds into dewdrops dotting the grooves of your fingertips. Keep cool, girl. Falling rocks don't always bruise. Some carry wishes on magic light beams. Let them into your orbit, girl. Wane worry, wax weightless. When your axis presses play, take her hand to dance. Howl at the moon, girl. Be cosmic, be mystery, be blood orange, be sepia supernova. Be here, girl. Spin silent secrets in the belly of your universe until they are ready for liftoff. My next poem is called Evergreen. I am here, swinging upside down from a yellow brick bridge, braids creek water deep in baked clay and quicksand. I squeeze my eyes and tell the fairies to push me faster, back and forth, back and forth. Here I am one of them, wings dyed to match the stain of my tongue. Some days I answer to lollipop red and orange Julius. Other days I am lemon sherbet, blueberry pie, or grape jelly. But today they call me Evergreen. Soon, time will start calling my name. Sweet dreams, little one. You should be studying, young lady. A woman's work is never easy. I'll murmur, hitting the snooze button. But today, I kicked my fairy dust up to kiss the endless sky, watch it fall back on rippled creek, on sunshine skin, on velvet moss, always evergreen. And my last poem for the evening is called We Are Here. We are here. Watch us bloom, watch us burst, watch us wild on golden nectar. We are queen bee. Locked wings make a home out of honey singing sweet. We are hummingbird. Love on looping figure eights, beat for us, beat for her, beat on, girl. We are maker. Mold clay crusted casts in the shape of our hips. Rinse us in the sea and call us grace. We are joy. Pressed in gemstone, kissed on two cheeks, carved into ankle bells dangling from our feet, boundless as we are here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey. We are Queen Bee. I love those poems. They just make me happy, make me want to dance. So our next reader is Jose Padua, and he has a recent book, A Short History of Monsters, winner of the 2019 Miller-Williams Prize, and he works in Arlington.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, I've never lived in Arlington, but I've worked in Arlington, for a company that's based in Arlington since 2002, although since 2007, I worked for them remotely. So Arlington is kind of a dream for me now, and it's a nice dream. This first poem was actually put in the Arlington Moving Words series. And this is from a number of years ago. It's called Why I'm So Much Greater Than Everyone Else. My peerless intelligence and keen wit, my good looks and vast physical prowess, above all, my sensitivity to your needs, most importantly, your need to serve and praise me. I am the outer limit, the stuff dreams are made of, the unmoved mover who sets the wheels in motion, the big cigar of perpetual smoking. I hold my head so high, I get nosebleeds. And then this second poem is I wrote in response for the call for poems about Arlington. This is called On the Commonwealth of the Universe and Other Small Spaces. When I was in high school, living in DC and getting rides to my friends' suburban houses, I always knew where I was if we ended up in Maryland. But whenever we crossed the Potomac into Virginia, I was lost. Ballston, Crystal City, Roslyn, Shirlington, and all the other neighborhoods in Arlington County in what was properly referred to as the Commonwealth of Virginia were simply terms of confusion for me. All my life, my place in the state, the country, on up to the almost infinite universe has always been up in the air, unsteady, unsure, and to those in the Commonwealth who sometimes looked at me askance and askew, possibly undocumented. But whenever we crossed that river, there was a story waiting for me, a place full of pies and ice cream, a store with all the music I couldn't find on a busy downtown street. And long ago, a friend who played guitar like me. And long ago, a woman who first introduced me to the empire of sound, the municipality of vision. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you. And by the way, for those of you who know Jose and his wife, Heather Davis, Heather also has work in the anthology. We're kind of a family thing. We also have a mother and daughter who have work in the anthology. So we have all these family connections. Thanks. Our next reader is Andy Fogel. He is the author of Across From Now, and he doesn't live in Arlington anymore, but he used to live here, right, Andy? You did live in Arlington, right?
Yep, 5 or 6 years. Okay, yeah, I lived here about, 5 or 6 years. I went to George Mason University as an undergrad, and my sophomore year, I spent almost every Monday night at the 15 Minutes Club in DC doing open mics and slams and stuff. And Jose was an awesome big shot on that scene, who was hilarious and moving and scary to me as a 19-year-old. And anyway, then a few years later, I came back to Mason for my MFA, and I wound up living in Arlington for 5 or 6 years, somewhere around there in the late 90s to the early 2000s. I'm just doing 2 of the poems I have in the anthology. The first one's called Building 24. I lived in Building 24 at 24 South Old Glebe Road, right off of Glebe Road there, Amy. And it was, I lived upstairs in a 2-bedroom with my best friend for years. And then I wound up, when my wife and I got married, we managed to buy a 1-bedroom in the same building. So I was in this one building for forever. And it was just one of the places that I felt, one of the few places maybe in my life that I felt immediately at home. And part of that's nostalgia talking, part of that's just being sappy and looking back. And I want to try to, pump the brakes on that a little bit, but it's also the truth. And so this poem is just, it's all one long sentence. It is kind of drunk with language, as I sometimes say. This particular style of mine is, there's bits of wordplay, and it just kind of tries to keep riding on its own senseless music, I guess. Building 24. I think it's 24 lines too. All the other buildings, red brick, 3 stories, above ground, and 1 more under. All the others with Christmas lights sooner than here. On each side of the doors, 2 large dark bushes, a thin atmosphere of gold rain holding in place the dark leaves out, glitterful and with the living in them, all gathered around the courtyard. 4 benches, trees that green, a hood the center. Hello, neighbor, hello, hello. We don't know how or why the large roads and their sounds can just hang there in the bare distance, just so. Solo, we're here, and hours pass, many moods, any day. Maybe we are ours, this complex, together, and don't know each other entirely. Here, where there is such dusking, and the duns knew errors might be faces, ones we always heard of. Surely we must all be familiar with this unfamiliar, one, the other, as sooner is when one becomes, amidst family a family, and the lately clear blue sky, the lately cooler weather and unstuck door, when today doesn't like tomorrow, and tonight stills today, lates it. So look not to the lack clock, it doesn't know the ties, nor the moon in the window, but look to a sound vibration in the body, words made by skin, tooth, and lung, some kind slowing, a holding on a second, a place where one beholds a home, real, graspable, right there, and not as close anymore. And then I'll do one other one. This is way shorter and way different. It's also called Glebe Road. It was on the Moving Words. It was one of those Moving Words poems on the buses. It was one of my like happiest honors. I thought it was the coolest thing, man. Like, I got a poem on a bus. Um, and I still have the banner, like this yellow poster that Kim Roberts gave us. I've still got that in my classroom, and it's just, you know. So I was talking way more than this poem is. It's only 7 lines long, but this one's just something I saw. He's either walking or maybe riding the bus down Glebe Road towards my apartment, and saw these 2 kids standing next to a couple of trees, and had this like quickly surreal moment, and then the rest is just kind of I don't know, kind of drawing, I guess. What trees are they from? Behind a bus stop shelter, a boy lies in a puddle of leaves, the heavy color of wine. Steps away, under a great yellow fountain, a girl matches her hand to a shard, and she doesn't pull back. Thanks a bunch, y'all.
Thank you so much, Andy. The Moving Words program actually brought me to a lot of the poets who have worked in the anthology. And the amazing thing is I went back to the 90s, the late 90s, to the archives of the Moving Words program. And so many of those poems are still so resonant, and they have so much power now. It's a really fabulous program. And I believe Kim Roberts was the person who got that started. So I don't think she's here tonight, but kudos to Kim. Our next poet and translator is Francisco Aragon. His most recent book is After Reuben. He lives in Arlington, and he commutes to Notre Dame University in South Bend, Indiana. So that's quite a commute. And maybe he'll tell us about that. I should also say that these poems are translations, and he'll talk about that. And for me as a poet, I don't see much difference between the work that I do originally in English and the work that I do translating from other languages. And we have, for that reason, many translations in the book. And these are some of the ones that I hope you'll enjoy. Francisco.
Thank you, Catherine. Arlington has been home since 2007. And although my poems in the tome we're celebrating tonight don't directly engage with Arlington per se, they are literary works, in this case, as Catherine said, translations that I've been working on for years while residing in Arlington. I'd like to think they're imbued with an Arlington sensibility, since an Arlingtonian has rendered them into English from the Spanish, specifically the Spanish of Gerardo Diego, who was born and died in Spain, a country that was also my home for the better part of the 1990s. A member of the so-called Generation of 27, Gerardo Diego, who was born in 1896 and died in 1987, was the poet among his peers who first became interested in avant-garde poetics. The mode he adopted in his experimental verse was creacionismo, or literary cubism. The 2 pieces I want to share tonight were written in 1922, while Diego lived on the north coast of Spain in a bungalow on the beach. He was 26 years old. They form part of a collection, Handbook of Foams. An accomplished pianist and music critic, Diego went on to publish many books and was an active editor. He earned his living as a high school French teacher. In 1979, he shared the Cervantes Prize, Spanish letter's highest honor, with the Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges. The natural phenomena of rain figures in the 2 pieces I'll be sharing tonight. Here we go. Rain. Bridge upstream, bridge downstream. The rain is out for a stroll. The river unfolds my wings, and birds flash their lights. All of us are gloomy and sad. All of you are too. Oh, when will spring arrive to skate along this walkway? Winter passes and passes. River downstream, river upstream. The miller's wife has seen it. pensively wade across. Trees shut their umbrellas. My hands spread the cold. Old birds and stars mistake each other's nests. The rain reaches the opposite shore. I will not dismiss it. It quickens the mill, and regulates the clock. Tomorrow the sun will unrise, and hollow drops of rain swoop into the bell for refuge. Performance. Off to the right, a radiant glow. Is the sky blushing, or the immaculate sock, the ground's rainbow? Everything is intact. The pigeon learns the song and the rules of flight. Today, the river and love are renewed without a pact. Music directs the council of gods, and the moon plays an interlude. Once more, the sea. It's gone on strike, refusing to play along. The pilot neglects the star and violin, and my hand fans the tired skiffs. It's like a garden solo in a rustling meadow. Good morning. The first time the sun has risen without making a sound, and I consult the guide to transfer without changing clothes. The hours go by, carrying my luggage. Will I reach the ending on time? The stars shine in shifts. At last, a moment has been seen. It was an eclipsed star, or the halo of Christ. The forest and orchestra weep. My watch says it's 4. Rain falls over the sea like a stage curtain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francisco. Thanks so much. We also have, just in case anybody's interested, we have a poem that was translated from Hindi in the book, and we have one from Russian. So we got 4 languages, and I thought we might have none. So I'm really excited to have the translations in the book as well. Our next reader is Richard Peabody, who is a poet, prose writer, publisher, man of letters, and that rare person who was actually born in Arlington. Richard Peabody. No?
Not born in Arlington.
No.
No. Spent my first year in Arlington and my last 14 years in Arlington. But I lived in the Lee apartments across from the Fort Meyer, first year of my life. And it's really strange. I moved here and I went to the grocery store in the strip there, right by the Fort Meyer, and I flashed recognition that it hadn't changed since the 50s. It was really strange. Anyway, I'm really happy to be part of this because I originally was just sort of looking at the manuscript for Catherine and going, wow, this is cool. Where are you finding all these people? And trying to steer her to people. And suddenly I ended up in the book, and then I ended up publishing the book when the previous publisher fell through. So it's all kind of a great honor for me to be part of it. And I can't believe the archaeology work that Catherine did. She found people I'd never heard of, and it's just a great job. Kudos to you. I'm going to read 2. The first one was sort of written when I came back to Arlington. It's called Hillbilly Music. A skinny man is reading poems, rush hour radio serenading the alley, a little Hank Williams in the night. My father appears in the doorway, his angry heart no longer able to cry, cheat, or eat gumbo. I don't believe in ghosts, so maybe he's really stopping by, having developed a taste for poetry in the afterlife. Not that I can hear many words, seated in the back of the gallery. The skinny poet reads slower than most children do when learning how. So what to make of my charismatic father as he mouths silent words at me? The fraction English of the poet at the podium, Hank Williams yodel, fusing together on the first warm spring night, 13 years after my father's fatal heart attack. Here I am now in Arlington, just a few blocks from the first apartment he lived in with my mother and their brand new baby boy, born 50 years and a couple weeks ago. What to make of silence and coincidence as Hank honky talks into the night sky, and the spaces between the skinny poet's words get more and more lonesome and blue. I think that was Lee Young Lee reading for one of Kim's gigs, I think. All right, this is a short one, and it's just going into Andy's surreal and Jose's surreal. And March of the Leaf Blowers. They don't use machines, just get down on their knees and blow.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Richard. That's the shortest poem in the book. I love that one as well. The book kind of goes through a number of themes, and there's a progression from sort of neighborhoods to sort of everyday things that we do, like go to the hospital, to women's work. There's some time spent with grief and loss. There's a couple of love poems. And as we get towards the end of the book, there are more poems of say time, space, the seasons passing, and that one, the one about the leaf blowers, is in that section. I'm going to post in the chat the links to where you can find the book, and also where you can find the YouTube channel with some poems from the book, interpretive videos, some of them, and also some poems that are not in the book. So take a look there, see what you think. I'm also going to read now a couple of poems by two poets who are no longer with us, but they left recently, and their work informed what a lot of us have done in Arlington. And so I want to make sure and include their voices here. The first one is by a person with a long connection to the DC area poetry community and the Writers Center. You may remember John Ellsberg, who is a poet, editor, and author of more than a dozen books. And this poem is called Virginia in Late August, by John Ellsberg. There is a softness in Virginia light. In late August, the light promises of the good days of autumn to come. It is the reward for enduring all that sweltering heat of midsummer. It does not pretend to have dark shadows. It is the light of unwinding, of having a beer on the reclaimed front porch, feet propped on the rail. It is the light that gives a distance to all those small defeats of the past, a softness that comes from that coolness after mowing that makes any virtue as easy as the curl of the bead on the glass at rest. I have to thank Kim Roberts for that one as well. She's the one who pointed me in the direction of that poem. The final poem I'm going to read tonight is by the late Karen Wood. Karen Wood was an Arlington native and a member of the Monacan Nation, and she died in 2019. She's the author of 2 collections of poetry, and this is the first poem written in Arlington, although it could probably also be the last. It's called First Light, and the poet is Karen Wood, and that's spelled Karenne, Wood. First Light. At this hour, who could discern where land ends, or water, where creek becomes bay, bay becomes river, and stretches across to a blue verge of Maryland, all the way black now, invisible. Through July's haze, the first light is a brushstroke of gray seeping in. Ducks totter up the beach, short bow-legged sailors. Over the water, Duck blinds loom as improbable creatures who graze a pale field. From the marina around the bend, 2 crabbers set out. Their diesel chugs reverberate as prows cut new waves. Mockingbirds swoop, flash their shoulders like women advertising summer dresses. Herons cast themselves down. What matters? At the end, we become what we have loved, each thing that transfixed us in the rapture of its moment, its grace of its own making, ours the same. We grow around the land as it grew around us, and dawn crosses over us, whether asleep in nests or births or in the ground becoming life again. Here is the moment. Here, among herons, ospreys, morning, river, I believe in this light. It is the light of the world. First Light by Karen Wood. In closing tonight, I would like to remind everybody that a number of the poets with work in this anthology have published new collections during the pandemic. So please consider supporting our authors, not just by purchasing Written in Arlington, but their individual books as well. These are, as you may know, very difficult times for poets and writers when we can't do live readings. And on the subject of live readings, please mark your calendar for September 23rd, when pandemic permitting, we will have the first ever live gala reading from Written in Arlington to be held at Lubber Run Amphitheater here in Arlington, emceed by Arlington's current poet laureate, Holly Karapitkova. Sorry, Holly, I mess it up every time. On behalf of all tonight's poets, Amy Young, Sandra Beasley, Corey Johnson, Jose Padua, Andy Fogel, Francisco Aragon, Richard Peabody, and me, Catherine E. Young. Thank you, Café Muse, and thank you everybody for coming tonight and sharing your evening with us. Thanks so much. And a round of applause, please, for all the poets.
Catherine, that was just a fabulous evening of poetry. Thank you so much. And thank you, I'm going to repeat this list again: Francisco, Sandra, Andy, Corey, Jose, Richard, and Amy. You were all wonderful. I feel like I've taken a trip to Arlington, which is not that far, but I don't do it too often. And also, I want to thank all of you, our wonderful audience, for being here. Please do consider showing your support for tonight's poets by buying a copy of Written in Arlington. I also want to thank WordWorks and Karen Alanier for sponsoring our program, Michael Davis for his music, Henry Crawford for his technical wonders, Catherine Young for sharing this terrific work, and my fellow Café Muse co-hosts, Susan Oakey, Renee Garrity, Leah Johnson, and Henry Crawford. Please join us on Monday, August 2nd for Poetry and Translation. I now know what DC Alt stands for, and so do all of you. Make sure you registered on our Café Muse website so you'll receive the information on the event as well as the Zoom link. And I want to also mention that Catherine will be reading from her own new book, Women Drinking Absinthe, in November, in our November program. So I hope you'll be able to come to that as well. I will see you in August for Poetry and Translation. Good night, everyone.